Good morning, everybody. Oh, lots of people. That's excellent. Good. Tori. Hi, Tori. Long time no see. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Caroline. How are you?
Yes, very good. Busy, 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 which I'm sure you are at your end as well still.
Yes, yeah, it's busy furlough stuff and all sorts going on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so they're big. Is it got more? It looked like it got more complicated with the new flexible furlough rules.
Too
Yeah.
much choice. There's too much choice out there now, and choice means people need to have guidance and ask questions and stuff. So,
Yes.
Yes, because we're no longer putting things into boxes, it's much harder for us just to give a one answer to everybody. So yeah, just lots of conversations to be had.
You say that with a smile on your face, and it's a Friday morning. It's like only a few more hours, and then it'll be the weekend. Yay!
If the sun would just shine, I'd be much happier.
Yes, exactly. It's always so awful when you actually. Obviously, both of us have been tied to our computers recently. But if you can look out the window and see the sunshine, you're like, oh, okay, that's fine. But when it's pouring with rain, it's like, oh, no,
No.
no. So that's good. Right. Good morning, everybody. I'm sure you'll have some questions as usual. So if you put any questions into the chat, I'm going to go through a couple of things. If Tori has any updates to flexible furlough or anything like that, that would be quite good. So flexible furlough came in on the 1st, 2 days ago, and you are able to now put your employees on to get them working part-time with you. You can change their hours effectively day to day, because you're always doing the furlough claim retrospectively. So it's okay to do it day to day. We've got a restaurant with an outdoor area, and they're like, okay, we can, if it's sunny, we can have lots of people in, there'll be work. If it's raining, there's no point in having anybody in. How much notice do we have to give? So what we're working on is that they give notice the night before, say you need to be ready to come in, and we'll let you know by 7 o'clock the night before whether we do need you in. And then at the end of the month, they will then go, okay, what do people work and what needs to be claimed for in furlough? Okay. The tricky bit, which I thought was, I can understand why they did it, but it's just annoying because it's more sums, is that when they're working for you, they get paid the proper rate of pay. So the new national minimum wage, they get any pay rises are taken into consideration, they get what they would be if we hadn't had the coronavirus issue. But the furlough claim is still at the pay as of the 29th of February. So you need to have those once you're not doing everything at their current rate of pay. Okay, so you still have two amounts. And if you're paying redundancy out to, say, 0 hours people, you're using that, you're actually ahead of the game because you've actually made that calculation already for the furlough payment, because you would use those average hours for 0 hours people to calculate what their redundancy pay would be. So actually, normally in a redundancy process, this is where they go, oh, do I have to do these sums? Can't I just guess? It's like, no, you have to do them. You've already done them if you're going to do that. We have had, again, some of the restaurants saying, well, can't I just bring back the 0 hours people and put them on 0 hours? And legally you can, absolutely. However, given that it's cost neutral in July, it really is cost neutral. You get 80% back, you pay them 80%, and you get your employer contributions back. There is no ethical reason why you would do that in July. In August, I think you would also be pushing it personally. I am an employer myself. I know that you look at how much money is going out and you sometimes go, okay, what did I pay for? But you are only paying the national insurance and the pension contributions in August. Once you get to September, yes, you're having to top up furlough. That would be fine to bring them back and put them on to their sort of normal hours, their 0 hours. By September, as we know, I mean, that's 2 months away. Can we all remember what we were doing 2 months ago? No. So who knows what it's going to be in 2 months? We might be perfectly okay, or we might be in our 5th lockdown by then. Who knows? So what we need to do is just say, okay, actually, we'll definitely keep people on furlough. You don't have to go back to them and say this. You don't have to tell them exactly when it's going to end before it ends. You just have to tell them when you need them to come back to work. But I think if you've got 0 hours people at the moment, given the situation, is to keep them on furlough at least for July. recommend to keep them on for August if you don't need them back at work, but you can do the flexible furlough still if you need them part-time, and then we'll worry about it mid-August for the beginning of September, depending on what is happening in September. We're going to keep doing these calls every fortnight until nobody shows up except for me and Tori. So you will have this forum to ask questions. But yes, so let's not get too ahead of ourselves as to, oh, what will I do in October? Who knows what we're going to do in October? Let's just get through the summer first, okay? People coming back from furlough. Obviously, more and more people are being asked to come back from furlough. The biggest complaint we've heard at the moment, which is not really a surprise, is again from the 0 hours people who, because they've been paid on the basis of average hours, are better off on furlough than they would be on the normal contract. And they don't want to come back. And they've said this, I don't want to come back because I'm better off on furlough. And I understand that, I do. I mean, we're all in it for the money, obviously the intrinsic satisfaction, but if there was no money, we might not be doing this role. I'm just saying. So it's just to think about that. They shouldn't be worse off if they are back doing part-time hours and the rest being topped up by furlough. They should be better off. Okay, if they're not, we need to look at what you're doing with your sums, because you're still working on those average hours that you use for the furlough calculation. So if they're so say they were doing 20 hours on average, if you bring them back for 10 hours, they get paid at the normal rate for 10 hours, and the other 10 hours are paid at the furlough rate. Okay, so there should be more that they're earning rather than less, because the furlough rate is 80%, not 100%. But we need to look at that. But if you're paying them, if you get them back to work and they're doing 20 hours a week, there is no furlough claim because they are working their average hours. So in that week, that's what I understood, Tori. That's how you're seeing it as well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yes, that's how we're seeing it, is that if that would match what their usual hours are, there is no furlough period.
Yeah, exactly. And if they're earning, or if they're working more than that, they definitely don't get any furlough. Okay, so up to the average hours, they would get their normal pay and the furlough. As soon as they're doing what you worked out were their average hours, then they're just being paid for the work they do. Okay, and there's no claim to be made for that. And I'm sure I'm going to have lots of conversations with employers saying, oh, but now I actually have to pay them for the work. Yes, I think you'll find that's how it normally works. I know we've all got lulled into a different world with the furlough, but that's going to be over soon. The other thing is we have had a couple, not as many, still saying about the shielding. Shielding is fine this month. Next month, as of the 1st of August, shielding goes. Everybody who can't work from home is supposed to be back at work, full stop. You've obviously got to have your health and safety in there, your risk assessments, your social distancing guidelines. It is slightly better because you can do the 1 meter plus rather than 2 meters, but you still got to make sure you got that there so that you can reassure the people who would rather be wearing hazmat suits, and also enough detail and clarity so that the people who really don't care less and would be having, you know, a rave in your offices, that they follow those guidelines as well, because it would be gross misconduct if they don't, if they start being silly. And we haven't had any instances of being silly like that, but if they start saying, oh, I'm going to cough over you, okay, it's a disciplinary, and you need to take it seriously. I know one of my trigger points is when people say, oh, it's just banter, because banter is what ends you up in a tribunal, because not everybody's got your same sense of humor, and it's you, the employer, who's going to be liable, not the staff. So you need to make sure really clear what is funny and what isn't funny, and what is going to get them a disciplinary. Okay, you don't have to dismiss them, but you absolutely have to do that discipline to go, no, really, I mean it, stop doing that. Do it with your friends, don't do it here. Okay, this is a workplace. The other thing we've got at the moment is that because staff are going back to work, we have got staff issues. So we've got grievances now, we've got disciplinaries going on, we've got long-term sickness absence. So everything that we didn't have to deal with during furlough is now coming back as well. So if you do have any staff issues, you need to jump on them. Okay, I know it's difficult. Everybody on this call has got lots to do, but you've got to get it dealt with quickly, because if not, it's going to fester, and and then it will get worse and worse and worse, and it will explode. You can't hope it's going to go away if you just ignore it. Okay, just because you think your staff member is just overreacting, That doesn't mean that you're not legally liable for it. Okay, so you just talk to us, talk to another HR advisor, I don't mind, but get the right advice to deal with it quickly, because dealing with it quickly with an HR advisor, it's going to get it done and you don't need to worry about it anymore. If you don't, you're just going to be thinking about it for days and days and days. And there's a great quote from an American person that I follow, and he said, if you are lying awake at 3 o'clock in the morning thinking about a member of staff and you are not having an affair with them, you need to fire them, because we never waste any time thinking about the good ones. The good ones are great. You're like 5 minutes, oh, they're really brilliant, great, I'll give them a bonus, that's it. It's always the other ones. So if you are lying awake thinking about them, you need to be parting company, which leads nicely on to the next bit, is the number of times we have a conversation with a manager saying, oh yeah, they're at 2 years and 1 month, but they've always been rubbish and I not like their attitude, and can we just get rid of them now? No, 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 no. Once they're over the magical 2-year line, it gets expensive and convoluted to try and part company. You need to look at everybody you employ, everybody on the first day, you put a reminder in your diary for 1 year and 10 months. And you say, right, at that point, are they amazing? Do I want to keep them forever? I mean, that's a question you need to ask. Do I want to keep them forever? No, well, maybe 5 years. Okay. If I keep them past 2 years, if I want to get rid of them, I could do a settlement agreement or a performance disciplinary or a restructuring. Am I willing to do that to get rid of them? Are they good enough for me to do that? And if there's any doubt about their attitude or their performance level, you need to part company with them, okay? And you need to make sure that they'll probably be on a month's notice at that point. Make sure that the notice doesn't take them over the 2 years, because then you've got an unfair dismissal claim. But under the 2 years, you can just say, it's not working out, really sorry, off you go, here's your notice, okay? Over 2 years, it is a nightmare, and you don't need to do it. And particularly if you say, oh, well, they've always been rubbish. But honestly, you're a manager, you're supposed to manage. That's what you get paid for. So we're doing a restructuring at the moment with one of our clients, and the managing director's like, okay, so the line managers are going to do all the meetings and do everything. And it's like, well, no, the managing director does the general meeting and gives the bad news out. It's like, oh, well, I don't really want to do that, because then I'll be the bad guy. Well, that's what you get paid for. We get paid to do the bad stuff. Your salary is for the bad stuff, not for the good stuff. You don't need to pay people to do nice stuff. People do nice stuff. You're getting paid to do the bad stuff. This is the bad stuff. You have to do it. Oh, all right. So he's in a bit of a sulk now, I'm just saying. So, but we're very much, if it's your business and you're doing it, you need to be saying those things and stepping up for that responsibility. And it's the same with managing staff. It's no good just saying, oh, well, they've always been rubbish and it's sort of not my fault and let's just get rid of them. It's like, you've got to put a little bit of effort in. I know I have staff myself. I've had quite a few staff over the years. It's been 17 years now. But you've got some just fit in and it's great and it feels like they've been there forever and they just get it, and others need a bit more help. But if they're not getting it in the first 6 months, which is why we have a trial period, then part company, make the decision then really. Do they want to say, is it something that you think you can change through training? And attitude you can't change. So one is skills. Okay, let's do some training, see if that will work. But if it's the attitude, if they've always been difficult, if they always talk back, they're always like, oh, do I have to? Just part company, just say, go away. And I know we'll want, at certain points in our business lives, we would just want bums on seats. It's just, oh, we'd rather have somebody there than nobody. I'm telling you, that is deadly, that approach, because they will just poison everybody else. They'll poison you. You'll be thinking about them at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's just delaying the end. You need, you hire slow and fire fast. That's what you need to do. And over the years, I've done the nice stuff. I have done the nice stuff. I know it doesn't come across that I'm always nice, but I have done the nice, and let's have another go and let's try this. And it's never worked out. It's either worked out immediately or not at all. And you just got to speed up that process and not let it drag on. Okay. What else have we got? Holiday. While we still got furlough, if you have staff on furlough, you need to be getting them to take their accrued holiday while they're on furlough, because then you only need to pay the 20% top up. Okay, get them to take what they've accrued up to date. If they haven't taken anything, you need to give them twice as much notice as the length of holiday. So if it's 5 days holiday they need to take, you need to give them 10 calendar days written notice of it. They cannot object legally. They have to do it. You pay them 100%. That's it. It's gone. Don't do it past the end of furlough or when you need them back at work, because you just let them take that, but you are allowed to say whether they take holiday or not. We had somebody who's supposed to be starting back now who's said, okay, well, I'm actually on holiday from the 20th of July to the 20th of August. Well, you're not, because you haven't asked for that, and you're only allowed to take 2 weeks at the same time. So, but if they do go, despite you saying, no, you can't go, then it's unpaid leave, it's not paid, and it's unauthorized absence, and it's a potential disciplinary. Okay, and again, if they're under 2 years, you would just say, right, you're out, you've resigned with immediate effect, off you go, there's no notice to be paid. Obviously talk it through with us just to check there's nothing hidden in the background. If they're over 2 years, it would be a disciplinary for gross misconduct, okay, which could lead to a dismissal as well. But again, you need to make sure you've got the right process, otherwise it would be gross misconduct, but you would still have to pay an unfair dismissal claim. So this is why lawyers get rich. All these distinctions, okay? The other thing is outright, okay, benefits. So furlough is a benefit, okay? It's generally available to everybody. We don't have to jump through many hoops for it, or almost any hoops, but it is a benefit. You can't have two benefits at the same time. So you can have furlough or maternity pay, or furlough or sick pay. You can't have both at the same time, okay? So if you have any staff who are pregnant, and again, in furlough, people, strangely enough, have had nothing to do and have got pregnant and are coming back now. You can keep them on furlough if they're not at a maternity leave time, but you need, once maternity leave is supposed to start, they go on to maternity pay, not furlough pay, okay? And you should, with everybody who says they're pregnant, you need to arrange the dates of when they're leaving on their maternity leave, when they're starting that, and when they're coming back. And you will be able to do that from the MATB1 form, MATB1 form, that they get at 24 weeks now. When I had my two, they were giving it out at sort of 14 weeks, but it's gone back and back and back. I think they're probably going to end up giving it out at 9 months now, the MATB1, so that, you know, oh, the baby's there, great, so the baby should be here now, great, have a form. But that's the form you need to have, one, to prove they are pregnant, because pregnancy can be used to avoid being dismissed, okay? The male equivalent of pregnancy to avoid being dismissed is cancer, unfortunately, that they say they've got cancer, which is even more difficult to prove than pregnancy, because at least you can see them getting bigger with pregnancy. So just be aware that if you are going to do any of those dismissals with anybody under 2 years, and you go in and you say, right, I'd like to have a word, and they say, oh, I've got some news, do not let them speak first. Just don't, just say, great, let me speak first, then we'll talk about your news later, okay? Because if they say at that point, I'm pregnant, all you can do is say, congratulations, oh, that's wonderful news, oh, da, 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 and walk away. You do not go ahead with any performance management conversation immediately after they've told you they are pregnant, okay? We can part company with somebody who's pregnant, but we're going to have to jump through a few more hoops, more paperwork to document that it's performance related, not pregnancy related. We did have somebody come to us and say they didn't understand why they had a tribunal form for £5,000, because this person had only been with them 3 weeks, came in, they were going to fire and said, let's have a chat about your performance. She said, oh yeah, that's great, and by the way, I'm pregnant. And they said, oh, that's great, and we're going to have to fire you on the grounds of performance. I mean, that was the conversation. It's like, okay, well, that's why it's £5,000. Yeah, but it's performance, not pregnancy. Yes, but you can't prove that it isn't, because you said it immediately after she said that. So they had to pay the £5,000. So this is what I'm saying. I appreciate it is tricky. There are things stacked against us, but one of the things that we have on our side, sorry, as employers, is that 2 years. That the 2 years we don't have to follow process. So it is frustrating when we do have to follow so many rules as employers, that one that we actually have on our side, people are just ignoring and forgetting about until it's too late, okay? People who are coming back off of maternity leave can go on to furlough. that is absolutely fine. So maternity leave, paternity leave, although that's shorter, or shared parental leave can go from that onto furlough, even if they weren't on furlough beforehand. That's absolutely fine. But furlough does not cover the unpaid part of maternity leave. Okay, so they're either on maternity leave or they're on furlough. So if they're having the year off for maternity, they're having the year off, and then when that year ends, then they can go on to furlough, but they can't go on to it for the last sort of 13 weeks of the maternity leave. Then the maternity leave would end. Okay, right, let me just go into the chat and see what we've got there. Oh gosh, okay, right. On the flexible furlough scheme, this is from James, do we apply increases on the minimum wage to the furlough pay? No. No. So when they're working, the increases on minimum wage are paid. For the furlough claim, it's what the minimum wage was back in February. Okay?
Thank you. I sent that before you actually answered the question at the beginning, but thank you so much for answering.
Well, no, it's good. It's good to make sure it's clear. That's fine. Right, Nicola. 0-hour staff are school minibus drivers. Okay, so would not work from mid-July to end August. Okay, so can we put them on 0 pay in July and August? Okay, our minibus drivers are furloughed and get paid 1 month. Okay, I'm not sure that you would need to put them on 0 pay in July and August. I think that's what I just covered. So given that they're cost neutral, Nicola, in July, there is absolutely no need to put them on 0 hours in July, because you would just pay them the 80%, you get the 80% back. There's no actual cost. So that seems fair enough to you. And then it's looking obviously at how much money you have for August to say, actually, let's keep them on that in August, bearing in mind that legally you don't have to. You're absolutely right, but it just feels wrong when there's money out there. It's not your money, it's the government's money, which is obviously ours, that we'll have to pay back at some point for the rest of our lives and the next 3 generations. But it just seems wrong to do that. I know they would normally not be paying, so maybe if you did just pay them the furlough for July, they'd be gloriously happy with that, because that's more than they would have got anyway. And then just put them on 0 hours in August as usual, and then from September everybody's back at school anyway. That would be, seems okay. Sarah, oh gosh. Okay, from Sarah, I have a driver who's been furloughed since March and he's due back to work some point in August. Okay, he is thinking about a change of career and may decide not to come back. Okay, however, someone probably on Facebook, has told him that if he leaves us, changes job whilst on furlough, he is liable to repay the amount he's received via furlough. No. Tori? No.
Oh, no, it's the old, my mate down the pub told me story, which we see a lot of in accounting, and they're just trying to scare you, them, somebody. But no, there's no worry about that at all. There's no talk of repayment. I think there may be a little bit of confusion. HMRC did say that there is now a method by which, if an employer feels that they shouldn't have had furlough, or they didn't want to claim the furlough, but it was still legal to do so, they can voluntarily give it back. I'm wondering who these people are, but somewhere out there somebody's feeling guilty about it, and you can pay it back. So maybe that story's got a little bit mixed up in the way through. But no, if you've been furloughed and then you go to do something else, there's no reclaim on that at all.
No, and the other one we've heard as well, or the other thing that somebody's trying to do, because we advise employees as well in the golfing industry, is that they're putting into their furlough letters that if the club has to repay the furlough amount, that the employee will have to repay it to them, to the club. And it's like, well, no, because the only reason the club would have to repay it would be if they'd done something illegal and claimed incorrectly. And that is not the employee's fault. So the employee cannot indemnify the employer for the employer's mistakes. So we've advised people to not sign that or to cross it out, because if they did that, that would not be liable. And there would be a tribunal claim, because it would be unlawful deduction of monies. So you would get the money back. So even if you are made to sign it, put under duress to sign it, or even if you put your employees under duress to sign it, just be aware that you are not going to win any claim on that, because it's your responsibility to make sure you're doing it right. And if you've done it wrong, that's your cost now, not their cost. Okay. Right, James again. Okay, James, any restrictions to terminating someone under 2 years whose partner is pregnant, apart from making you feel like a terrible human being? Yeah, I know. No, and obviously we don't need to mention the pregnancy in any way, shape or form, because that has nothing to do with the person you're going to terminate. The person you're terminating is because of restructuring or because of poor performance or a poor attitude, nothing to do with pregnancy. Do you want to explain a bit, James? Or
basically, we have a member of staff in one of our restaurant sites who is one of our more expensive members of staff, has been on furlough for the whole period, is not, and is the only one of our sort of more expensive members of staff who is under 2 years. We are looking at how, as a restaurant chain or small restaurant chain, that we function moving forward. And I spoke briefly last time about sort of some redundancies and restructuring. I think, having had a look at it, that actually everybody that we could potentially get rid of is under 2 years, and sort of all temporary ones, apart from this guy who is a more senior, full-time, but is on less than 2 years. So basically giving him notice and getting rid of him at the end of August would save us money, but makes me feel like a terrible human being. But we've got to, who knows what the restaurants will be doing going forward. And
no. Well, exactly, and we as employers, we do feel guilty. All the good employers do feel guilty about these things, because you are aware of what's happening in people's private lives, but we are not responsible for them. It is difficult. It really is, but you've got to say, look, this is what the business needs to survive. Our role as business owners is to make sure the business survives so that it can grow again. And that's what we have to do, no matter what else anybody else is doing, okay? What I would say is that if you are doing restructuring, even though they are under 2 years, we're not doing a 3-week consultation period, but I would still have a general meeting so it does set the tone, and then speak to all the ones you're going to get rid of on an individual basis, which I would expect you to do anyway, because you're a good employer, and say, look, I'm really sorry, you're going to have to go because of our restructuring and things are downturn, and here's your notice, and off you go, thank you, you're on furlough. But if you do that, then again, it minimises any comeback, oh, you're only picky on me, because it's like, no, look, there's all these people at risk and all these people going. It takes a sting out of it. It's less personal. Redundancy is one of the worst things to do, because you're getting rid of people usually because they've not done anything wrong. It's just because of a downturn in business, as opposed to doing a dismissal after a disciplinary, which is actually quite enjoyable. I'm just saying, when somebody's done something wrong and you can document that they've actually done something wrong, then it's actually quite an easy parting company. But in these cases, these are probably good people, but you just can't use them at the moment. So it isn't great, and you do need to have a stiff drink afterwards. Okay.
Would you suggest a Zoom meeting with all members of staff?
Yeah.
And that won't count as sort of getting them back from work, will it?
No, you'll be fine with that. Yeah. Because they don't have to sign up. We send the invite to their private email and say, please join us to talk about the future of the business. And some will, to be honest, we've only ever had one who didn't turn up, and that was because he was in a special situation, so he just didn't have access. But everybody else does, and we then send them the letters. So the meeting is what you're supposed to do, but it's sort of the nice to have. You can do the whole process by letter, because that's what you do if somebody's on maternity and can't come in and doesn't want to do Zoom, because we didn't do Zoom previously. We just did face-to-face. So yeah, I would do it with everybody, explain the situation, then have the individual meetings on Zoom as well. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Eva, holidays. Bank holidays are not deemed automatically to be taken, so they're part of the accrued holiday during the furlough period. Is that correct? Not correct, not quite. If it says in their contract that it's 20 days holiday plus 8 days bank holiday, then the bank holidays are deemed automatically to be taken, and they need to be paid at 100% for those. We've had 4 bank holidays in lockdown. Hopefully, I mean, furlough is still going on into August, so we've got the August bank holiday as well. So that could be done that way if you've still got people on furlough at that stage. So you would need to pay them 100%, and therefore they've gone. So if that's how it's phrased in your contracts, they've gone. If it's just 28 days, which is more common in food and beverage, is to then say, okay, actually, they haven't automatically taken them. They can be carried forward, and you're going to have to make them take them at some point. But they can be carried forward for 2 years. Okay, so the next 2 leave years they can carry them forward. But you're going to need to be even more on top of holiday than usual to make sure it's taken, because you're going to have possibly claims for working time regulation breaches that they haven't been able to take the breaks that they need to have. Okay, David. Right. Okay. So a potential future redundancy with a PA. It's been there for over 15 years. There's only 3 in the business. Can you go into discussions, or do you need to have a public meeting? The public meeting is just with her. I mean, given there's only 3 of you, and I would guess that possibly your partner is the other 3rd person. There you go. So I would just have all 3 of you having that general meeting. Okay, and then you go, and then either that afternoon or the next day have the one-to-one meeting. Now, it depends on the situation. So I prefer, to be honest, to have that one-to-one meeting fairly quickly, i.e. the same day, because people have got questions. But sometimes it's also better to let them process that and then come back in the next day with questions, because on that same day they're just in shock. However much they're expecting it, they are just in shock. Okay, so it might be better to have, say, on a Monday afternoon, just before is she on furlough at the moment?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so to have it sort of mid Monday afternoon on Zoom, have the conversation and say, right, we'll talk first thing tomorrow morning. Here's the email stating that, because you have to give them a formal email, a formal letter stating what the situation is, and then the next day you would say, okay, so we don't have any open roles, we're getting rid of the PA, we're going to do the admin ourselves, really sorry, we're going to keep looking to see if there's any sort of illumination or any suggestions you have to avoid redundancy. And I think as it's just one person and the role's going and there's no other roles, you could do it in 2 weeks. Okay, because even though it's one person and it seems really clear, and I do have this conversation a lot of times with golf clubs, you still have to do a fair and reasonable process. You have to give time to the employees to process it and then go forward. Okay, so normally we do 3 weeks. I think if you've got one person, if you have the general meeting on the Monday, individual meeting first thing Tuesday, and then obviously you would be talking to her, she might be coming back to you, say, what about we do this, why don't we do that, You don't have to accept any of the suggestions, but then Friday the following week you would be having the final termination meeting with her and paying her her redundancy pay. And for the redundancy pay calculations, you need to go on to the government redundancy calculator. So Cassie, if you're able to put that into the chat, so you put that in there, that will tell you how much they are entitled to. So their weekly pay is capped at £538 a week, but there is weighting depending on what age they're at. And the maximum anybody gets is £16,100 tax-free. Now, the notice period, she would be on a 12-week notice period. She could be on furlough for that, so you can get some money back, but the redundancy pay is your cost and you can't get out of that.
She's already been put on part-time just prior to furlough, so her notice period will be prorated, I guess, will she?
No, if she's been 15 years, it's 1 week for every completed year of service, up to a maximum of 12 weeks.
Right, okay.
So it might affect the pay, yeah? So if the pay was lower before February, you would be using that pay to calculate how much money, but the notice period is always going to be 12 weeks.
Okay.
Yep. So really, in the nicest possible way, the sooner you get that done, the better, because you've got August, September, October, you've got to get it all sorted so that you can give a notice by the 31st of July to maximise the feedback from the furlough scheme.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Right. Okay. Tori, have you got any nuggets, or I'm sure you've got a lot of questions where you go, okay, guys, this is what you need to be doing. Yes.
I think the bit that I'm getting the most questions around is these cut-off dates, which is causing quite a lot of confusion. So we did get a bit more clarity. I think it was only released last night, actually, the latest bit of guidance. So we're moving from the old scheme that finished on the 30th of June into flexible furlough that starts on the 1st of July. And the way that those 2 claim periods are dealt with has changed. So if you have got claims to make for furlough that run up to the 30th of June, You need to make sure that those are all claimed by the 31st of July. After that period, you will not be able to claim for anything 30th of June and before. So you lose the right for that claim. So you do need to make sure this month that everything going back right to the beginning of furlough has been claimed for, because you won't be able to go back after the 31st of July. So that's the first bit. The second thing is we do have some people, we used to have more people that had monthly payrolls that ran to the 5th. You know, the old, the tax period actually runs to the 5th of the month. So your month could have run 6th of June through to the 5th of July, paid on the 5th of July. Not quite so usual now, but once we, if you split that up into weekly pay, we do lots of weekly payrolls, that sometimes they cover over the end of the month. Now, where you've got a period that runs over the end of the month, you need to do two separate claims. So you need to do a claim up to the 30th of June, and then a claim for the little bit of July that falls. So let's just say, for example, we've got a period that ends on the 5th of July. You would do a claim from this, if it's monthly, from the 6th of June to the 30th of June, one claim with your furlough, and then the next claim would be from the 1st of July to the 5th of July. Now, a few people have said, but you can't do that because all furlough claims now have to be 7 days or longer. They do, apart from at the beginning and the end of the month. So the guidance is always 7 days, except if it's the beginning or the end of the month, and then that's okay. So what you are allowed to do, as long as it runs up to, so for example, if you've done a claim up to the 30th of June, you can then do 1st to the 5th of July as one claim. And then your next claim would be 6th of July to the 30th of July, 3 weeks basically. And then the next claim you would do from the 1st of August through to the 5th of August. So in each 1 month period, 1 calendar month period, you'd have 2 claims for furlough. Now it might be as clear as mud. Hopefully, if you've got those kind of complexities, you've got an accountant or somebody helping you with payroll who can get their head around that. But you need to make sure that going forward, all of your furlough claims fall into calendar months. So you always have to have finished your furlough claim by the 30th or the 31st of the month. And the reason for that is because the way the furlough scheme works changes on a calendar monthly basis from now on. So the claims need to fit into those boxes, because what you can claim in July is different to what you can claim in August, is different to what you can claim in September. So you need to make sure you're making those chop ups in between. 7-day minimum period in the weeks that aren't at the end of the month. So you can't then say, I'll do every 5 days a claim. That's not going to work. You'll have to do a 5-day, then a 7-day or a 21-day or whatever's going to suit you, and then another little bit at the end if you need it. And what's the other thing about those periods I was going to say? You can claim up to 14 days in advance. So if you're using flexible furlough, it's very likely that you're not going to know how much to claim until you get to the end of that period. You know, if we're talking food and beverage, for example, if we're talking retail, we're expecting those to be quite changeable. If, however, you're using flexible furlough, but maybe it's for somebody that's salaried and you've decided they're going to come back 3 days a week, and it's going to be like that for all of July, then you could, on the 14th of July, put in a claim to the end of July, 31st of July, so you get the money in and then you pay it back out, so that you're not out of pocket during that period. So what I would be recommending is those people with fixed hours, fixed but within the flexible furlough, that you've decided next four weeks we're going to work like this, and you're really quite certain that's not going to change, then put in your claim in advance. Everybody else, if there's any uncertainty about it, the sensible thing to do is to wait and put your claim in at the end. I know for some people that's going to make cash flow tricky. So there are a lot of very complex other options that HMRC have now given us, where you can make a part payment and you can do 2 FPSs, so that's 2 RTI submissions for a period, and you could do some payments earlier than other payments. If you can avoid it, I would. The RTI system itself is sometimes a little bit shaky. Start throwing in extra payment periods that don't fall in line with your furlough periods, it's going to fall over somewhere. And it's going to be very hard to unpick and get back to. So as much as possible, I'd be trying to arrange with your staff some kind of certainty as to what's going to happen over the next couple of weeks. Of course, the sort of examples that Caroline gave, where if it rains you don't need half as many staff, you're just not going to be able to do that. But for the cash flow bit, if you can be certain and you can claim in advance, 14 days in advance, it will help you when you get to the end of the month with those payments. I think that's probably covered all of that. weird stuff around the claims. Caroline, if you've got anything
Yes.
popped up around that, if you've been asked anything around those.
Yeah, people were just concerned about if they put people onto sort of part furlough in June, about the 3 weeks going over. I think this is what we talked about last time. So how they claim for that, but that seems to be really straightforward. And also, this is actually an entrepreneur saying, business owner, if you're acquiring a business, buying a business because they've gone bust, you would get their staff as well. You could put them onto furlough. That was sorted out on, well, way back. Not even, I think that was back in April, beginning of April, that they confirmed that TUPE transfers, which is what it would be, they absolutely can go on to furlough even if they went on your PAYE at that point. It would be perfectly fine. So that would not be a reason to not take on the business at the moment. But yes, like you say, Tori, is just look at the end of the month. Don't do it in advance. I know there is a delay between you getting the money, applying and getting the money, but actually now you need to have that flexibility, and that's what they've set it up for, is for it to be flexible, that you can do it on a weekly or even daily basis. What do you need to have in today? And then at the end of the month go, right, this is what we had, that's what we're claiming for. It's a lot more straightforward rather than trying to guess and then go, oh, it's wrong and we need to make an adjustment. And yeah, it's just no. Just don't do that. No. Okay, is there anything else, any other questions from anybody? Okay, so that's great. So anything else, just send us the emails. We'll do our best to answer them. We'll be back here in 2 weeks' time. We'll see what issues have come up in the meantime. And if you have anything in employment law or even accounting, should you want to ask a question, I mean, I'm sure we'll still have questions about flexible furlough at that stage, but just let them come through, because we know it's still a difficult time. It is getting a bit easier, but it's not straightforward, and I don't think it's going to be more straightforward until September, when children go back, and we can all come down. Oh, that was just the last point, sorry. The only sort of legitimate reason for not having people back at work and keeping them on furlough is going to be the childcare from the 1st of August, because although, and I know people who run holiday clubs, they can take children, but they're only allowed to take 15 children at a time. That becomes the bubble. They're not allowed to have new people in. If somebody leaves, that's it. Then it's under 15. So there will be some childcare around, but not as much as there might have been usual. So you are going to have to be more flexible on that. It's not because women are a pain in the neck. It's because the teachers' unions and et cetera, and the government and coronavirus. Guess what? Coronavirus happened. So just be flexible till the beginning of September, and then we'll worry about disciplining anybody who's not coming back then at that point, but try not to get too caught up in it. And if people are not coming back and they're on furlough, so because of childcare, you are allowed to hire somebody else in that role to cover if you need it. Okay, it's not going to be seen as discrimination. There is a reason why they're not coming back, and therefore you still need the cover. Great, but then you need to be looking in September. We need to be getting them back in again, and if they're not going to come back, we need to deal with that. Okay, and we can help you deal with that. But yeah, good. Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody. Have a lovely weekend, no matter what the weather is with you, and I'll see you in a fortnight. Okay, bye.
Thanks so much.
Bye.